Montana can look as if winter has emptied the landscape. Snow closes the high country, ice covers the rivers, and January temperatures in parts of the Northeast average below 12 degrees Fahrenheit. But cold does not remove danger. It changes where danger waits. A grizzly can disappear in timber. A bison can stand beside a road looking almost motionless. A deer can enter the headlights before a driver can react. And inside a closed cabin, a deer mouse can create a medical emergency without ever touching a person. Across the continental divide, weather and seasonal movement can push wildlife toward roads, ranches, towns, and trailheads. This is not an official state index, or a list built by adding unrelated death totals. We weigh 4 things: severity, realistic exposure, geographic reach in Montana, and whether the danger can be shown without turning a rare event into a certainty. Some animals can attack. Others become dangerous through roads, venom, disease, or the mistake of getting too close. Here are 15 of the most dangerous animals found in Montana. The western black widow begins the list in places that do not look wild at all. Montana State University Extension says the species is present throughout the state. It may hide in a woodpile, a crawl space, a garage, or another protected retreat where a hand can reach before the spider is noticed. The black widow is timid and more likely to escape than bite. Most bites are defensive accidents caused by pressing against the spider or reaching into its shelter. But its venom contains a neurotoxin that can cause severe muscle cramps, sweating, rigid abdominal muscles, and symptoms that may last for days. That combination of statewide presence and medically important venom earns the black widow number 15, without pretending that every dark spider is dangerous. At number 14 is the gray wolf, an animal whose reputation is far larger than its documented human danger in Montana. Wolves are powerful social predators, able to travel long distances and bring down prey such as elk. Their tracks, howls, and coordinated movement naturally create fear. But fear is not evidence of frequent attacks. Montana's current wolf management plan reports that no wolf-human encounter in the state has resulted in human injury or death. Wolves generally avoid people, and a distant animal crossing a valley is not a threat. The risk rises only when a wolf becomes habituated, remains around homes, or behaves unusually around people, pets, or livestock. The wolf belongs on the list because of capability, but it stays near the bottom because real Montana history does not support turning it into a routine human predator. A ranking based only on appearance would place it much higher. A ranking based on documented human exposure cannot. The mountain goat at number 13 creates the opposite problem. It looks calm, bright white, and almost perfectly adapted to the snow-covered cliffs of Glacier National Park. Near Logan Pass, some goats have become accustomed to trails, boardwalks, crowds, and the salt associated with human activity. That familiarity can erase the distance a wild animal needs. Glacier researchers have repeatedly warned visitors that mountain goats can be dangerous, especially when people crowd them for photographs or block their movement. The park's minimum viewing distance is still 25 yards, yet the boardwalk can make that safety boundary feel smaller than it really is. The horns are narrow, sharp, and built for competition. A goat does not need to hunt anyone to cause a serious injury. The danger comes from habituation, close trails, and the false belief that an animal standing beside a boardwalk has become tame. At number 12, the bat turns a small indoor encounter into a public health decision. Most bats are not rabid, and they are valuable insect predators. But Montana treats bats and skunks as high-risk rabies animals after a possible exposure unless testing proves otherwise. In 2023, 25 submitted animals tested positive for rabies in Montana. 23 of them were bats and 2 were skunks. That does not describe the percentage of all bats infected. It describes the positive animals found through testing. The danger is that a bat bite can be tiny enough to miss, especially when a bat is discovered in a room with a sleeping person or a child. Rabies is preventable when exposure is evaluated quickly, but once clinical disease develops, it is almost universally fatal. Never handle the animal barehanded, and never guess whether contact mattered. In Montana, the correct response is evaluation, not panic, and not releasing a possible evidence animal before public health advice. The tick at number 11 is dangerous because the encounter can disappear before the illness begins. Montana tracks several locally relevant tick-borne diseases, including Rocky Mountain spotted fever or related rickettsiosis, tularemia, and Colorado tick fever. The state reports yearly averages of roughly 8, 5, and 4 cases for those conditions, respectively. Those numbers are small, but the mechanism is easy to underestimate. A Rocky Mountain wood tick can attach during a hike through grass or brush, and the person may notice only after returning home. Montana also reports Lyme disease in residents, but state health guidance says those cases were acquired outside Montana and that the black-legged tick responsible is not established in the state. That correction matters. The real local warning is not every disease associated with ticks somewhere in America. It is the specific Montana exposure that can be prevented by repellents, clothing checks, and careful removal. A photograph of a tick can help with identification, but it cannot diagnose infection or replace medical evaluation when symptoms develop. At number 10, the mosquito brings summer back into a video about a cold state. Montana health officials identify West Nile virus as the state's primary established mosquito-borne illness. The virus is transmitted by infected mosquitoes, not by every mosquito moving above a wet field or riverbank. In 2023, Montana reported 42 human West Nile cases and 1 death. Other years have been quiet, while outbreaks have returned in cycles. Most infections do not produce severe disease, but neuroinvasive illness can affect the brain and nervous system, and risk rises with age. The mosquito ranks above the tick because its exposure can spread across towns, farms, and recreation areas during the same warm season. The danger is a transmission chain, not the sound of a single insect. Warm evenings near irrigation water and wetlands are the exposure story. A dramatic tropical disease montage would be misleading. The deer mouse at number 9 may be the most surprising animal in the middle of the list. It does not need to bite, chase, or even remain in the room. In Montana, deer mice are the primary source of hantavirus. Infection can occur when contaminated urine, saliva, or droppings are disturbed, and virus-containing particles become airborne. Since 1993, Montana has reported 49 hantavirus infections and 11 deaths. The state usually records only 0 to 2 cases in a year, so this is a rare danger, not a common household outcome. But rarity does not erase severity. Sweeping or vacuuming a closed, rodent-infested cabin can put contaminated dust into the air. The correct image is not a mouse attacking a person. It is an old shed, a sealed winter cabin, droppings, poor ventilation, and a cleanup method that turns hidden contamination into exposure. Safe cleanup means ventilation, wet disinfection, and avoiding actions that launch contaminated dust into the lungs. At number 8 is Montana's only venomous snake, commonly called the prairie or western rattlesnake. The state has 10 snake species, but this is the one that carries medically important venom. It can be nearly invisible against dry grass, rocky ground, sage, and the warm edges of trails. The rattle is a warning, not a promise. A snake may remain still, move away, or strike defensively if stepped on or cornered. Montana's cold winters limit when snakes are active, but spring and summer place people in the same sun-warmed habitat. Correct identification is essential because harmless bull snakes and other species should not become fake rattlesnake-proof. At number 8, the danger comes from venom, camouflage, and a close accidental step, not from a snake chasing someone across the prairie. The right chapter contrasts warm low country with snowbound peaks, showing why climate controls the encounter window. The elk at number 7 changes with the season. A bull carrying a full rack of antlers can weigh hundreds of pounds, yet a cow protecting a hidden calf can be just as dangerous. In spring, a person may walk around a building, tree, or parked vehicle and suddenly enter the space between a cow and her young. In autumn, the rut makes bulls stressed, territorial, and unpredictable. National Park Service guidance warns that elk may charge people or vehicles, and that visitors should remain at least 25 yards away. Montana's open valleys and the northern Yellowstone region make elk easy to see, which can make them feel familiar. The hazard begins when a photograph, a roadside crowd, or an apparently calm animal convinces someone to close the distance. Antlers are obvious, but hooves and body mass make even an antlerless animal capable of serious injury. At number 6, deer create danger without acting aggressively at all. White-tailed and mule deer cross highways, rural roads, town edges, and river corridors across Montana. The critical moment is often a shape entering the headlights at dawn, dusk, or night. Montana's Transportation Department maintains statewide wild animal crash and carcass data, but it openly warns that reporting is incomplete and that species are not recorded consistently. That means this ranking should not invent a precise statewide deer death total. What the data can show is a repeated road pattern, and Montana route studies identify high-frequency deer collision zones. One Montana highway study identified 27 high-frequency white-tailed deer collision sections along Montana Highway 83. That finding is corridor-specific, not a statewide total, but it reveals how danger can cluster along ordinary travel routes. A deer is smaller than a moose or bison, but it is common, mobile, and close to traffic. Its danger is exposure multiplied across thousands of ordinary drives. In winter, darkness, snowbanks, and limited braking distance can narrow the driver's choices further. The mountain lion at number 5 is built for an encounter a person may never see coming. It uses cover, low light, and a short, explosive sprint to catch prey. Montana FWP notes that a 100-pound lion can kill an elk several times its own weight. Yet actual conflicts with people remain rare. More than 70% of Montana's lion-human interactions involve 1 to 2-year-old animals, often young lions establishing new home ranges. That detail changes the story. The honest risk is not an adult cat stalking every hiker. It is a rare, unusual encounter with a powerful predator near deer habitat, a fresh kill, pets, or the edge of development. A lion feeding on cached prey should never be approached, and an animal behaving aggressively near people should be reported. At number 4, the black bear has a much broader everyday presence. Montana FWP says black bears live across most of the state. In Western Management Regions, 2024 reports recorded hundreds of bear-related and conflict calls, many involving garbage, fruit, grain, livestock feed, or other human attractants. Those reports are regional, not a statewide attack count. Most black bears avoid people. The danger grows when food teaches a bear to return to a campground, porch, orchard, or neighborhood. A black bear has the strength and speed to make a close defensive encounter serious, but the mechanism often begins hours earlier with an unsecured cooler or overflowing bin. The best visual is not a staged charge. It is the sequence that creates conflict: food, repeated access, lost wariness, and shrinking distance. The moose at number 3 looks slow only when it is standing still. Montana moose occupy western forests and willow wetlands, but they also use river and riparian corridors in the eastern prairie. Their size, long legs, and dark body can make them difficult to see on a road in low light. That range matters because the encounter is not confined to a mountain trail. A moose can appear near a river corridor, roadside, cabin, or town edge, where its size leaves little room to improvise safely. On foot, the danger changes with behavior. The rut usually peaks near the end of September, and cows can defend calves during spring and early summer. A moose can charge, kick, and move far faster than its heavy outline suggests. Dogs can intensify an encounter because a moose may treat them as a predator. The moose ranks above black bears and mountain lions because people may approach it as if it were a harmless, oversized deer, precisely when distance is the safest response. At number 2 is the American bison, the animal most likely to be mistaken for scenery. In the greater Yellowstone region and nearby Montana corridors, bison can stand beside roads, vehicles, and crowds with almost no visible urgency. Their calm appearance is the trap. The National Park Service says bison have injured more Yellowstone visitors than any other animal. They can run about 3 times faster than a person, and warning signs such as pawing, head movements, a raised tail, or a bluff charge may leave little time to correct a bad decision. Yellowstone is not entirely in Montana, so its incident record is not a Montana-only count. But bison move through the shared regional landscape, and Montana manages wild bison outside the park. At this scale, 25 yards is not an empty suggestion. It is the minimum distance between a photograph and an animal capable of crossing that space almost instantly. At number 1 is the grizzly bear, Montana's official state animal and the clearest combination of power, concealment, expanding range, and human overlap. Grizzlies live mostly in western Montana, but state wildlife officials say they are increasingly appearing in places they have not occupied for decades. That expansion does not mean grizzlies are hunting people. Most encounters end without injury, and many conflicts begin with food, livestock, carcasses, surprise at close range, or a person moving between a bear and cubs. But the margin for error is small. A grizzly can accelerate quickly, defend a food source, and remain nearly invisible in brush until the distance is already dangerous. Montana's 2024 regional reports document hundreds of grizzly-related calls and conflict responses across western management areas. Those are not statewide attack totals, and many calls are sightings or requests for information. They show something more useful. Bear country is expanding into the places where people live, hunt, hike, camp, and store food. The grizzly takes number 1 because no other Montana animal combines this level of physical consequence with such a powerful change in geographic overlap. The strongest safety story is prevention, visible travel, bear spray carried accessibly, secured attractants, and room for the animal to leave. Montana's most dangerous animals do not all create the same kind of danger. The grizzly carries the strongest close-range consequence. The bison and moose punish the mistake of treating size and calmness as safety. Black bears and mountain lions show how food, prey, pets, and development can move a predator closer. Deer turn an ordinary road into the most common kind of wildlife encounter. The rattlesnake, tick, mosquito, bat, and deer mouse prove that a threat can be hidden in grass, air, dust, or a wound too small to notice. The lesson is not that Montana is unsafe. It is that cold, distance, and open space can create false confidence. The same state contains frozen alpine passes, dry prairie, forest cabins, ranch roads, river bottoms, and crowded park entrances. Each landscape changes the rules. Know the animal, respect the season, secure food, keep the right distance, check for vectors, and treat a real exposure as a medical question instead of a test of courage. Which animal would you move in this ranking? Tell us in the comments.